What's up, guys? We'll give everybody about 2 minutes to join. What's up, T Gray? Um, and then we will get started here. Okay, let's get started. 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock. People can join as we go. Um, if you guys have stocks, tickers you want me to look at, just put them in the chat, in the Zoom chat, and I will cover those for you and go over those with you. And then, yeah, so we're going to kind of do what we usually do. I'm going to go over the SPY charts, well, obviously the indexes, and then kind of the key stocks, and then we can take a look at some of the sectors, and then I'll get to all your guys' requests. So if you have stocks you want me to look at, just throw those in the chat, and we will go over those. Okay, so let's get started here. So first, take a look at the indexes. Okay, so first of all, we kind of had a key sell-off in the weeks prior. So basically, if you want to make this a super simple idea, basically what we were seeing was a pattern of higher highs and higher lows. And then we kind of shifted into this correction here and then kind of came up, tried to create a higher high once again, failed. And then now we are creating a low. And so now what we're kind of at right now is a small correction upside. So this is kind of what the chart looks like if you were looking at it from a line chart basis. We're creating higher highs and higher lows since here, this consolidation we broke out of. So we were creating higher highs once we broke out of the consolidation. That kind of ended. And then we had a strong correction, pull back up. And now if you want to just take like a larger perspective, all we're doing is at a new low. So obviously we don't want to short here. We're looking for rallies back into the 21 EMA to look to get short. That's usually the best spot to do it. And it's always good to see like squeezes and things like that. So there's a few different ways we can look at this. So there's the fundamental way of looking at it. Okay, we're making lower highs, or we are making well in the mix of pretty much a downtrend, what we are creating, right? And so there's that way to look at it, straight based off of structure. The next thing we can look at is, okay, we had periods of time where we created a squeeze. So here, and that's what kind of catapulted us from 415 area up to the 450 area. And so that's what we had last, right? So we had a squeeze here, and this was also a weekly squeeze. So notice the size move that we had. It was a weekly squeeze that kind of fired us off, a compression of volatility that released to the upside. Cool. Okay, so now what we're looking at is, okay, now that we know that, we go look at the rest of price action. So the weekly squeeze kind of lost its momentum here, and we've been kind of trading sideways ever since and a slight downtrend. And so if we look at the daily time frame, basically what happened is we had a daily squeeze, which was inside a weekly squeeze. Boom, we had our move up, right? And we had a little squeeze here and pushed up from there. And then from there, we had a daily squeeze that pushed us downside. We came back up. We had another daily squeeze that pushed us downside again. So that's kind of what's been going on. So really, you can look at this of the perspective of higher highs and higher lows, or you can take the perspective also that we just create a squeeze and then basically develop another squeeze, take off, develop another squeeze, break down, develop another squeeze, and then break down. So kind of the same thing over and over again, right? So That's kind of the perspective you have to take when it comes to trading. It's kind of the same thing over and over. So this is basically what I'm looking at. You can look at from the basics of structure of higher highs and higher lows, and then lower highs and lower lows. But you can also look at it from contraction of volatility, release, contraction of volatility, release, contraction of volatility, release, contraction of volatility, breakdown. Cool. So pretty simple. This is why I like the squeeze indicator. It makes it very simple. You can see every time we've had a big move, they always kind of coincide with each other. So like here, where's my drawing tool? Another squeeze here, which sent us upside here, and then another squeeze here, sent us downside, and it just continues to happen over and over again of these squeeze plays and break out, squeeze play, break down, squeeze play, break up, squeeze play, break down, and it just happens over and over again, right? Okay, cool. So as for SPY, we had a daily squeeze, obviously fired off. And so what we're looking at now is, okay, what are we going to do into like this week? So let's take a look at the lower time frame. So we've got a 2 hour, 1 hour, and 30-minute squeeze. So let's take a look at these from different perspectives. So let's start with the higher time frames. Number one, clear downtrend, right? We got the stacked EMAs, we've got a squeeze. We're in a clear downtrend, right? So number one expectation, probably going to head lower, right? That's the guess. If we want to look at like, where's my, so here's the daily chart here. We're at -3 ATR. So it's a little dicey to short down here. We're kind of extended. We're down at -2 ATR, -3 ATR. So it is a little dicey to try and short down here. Typically, when we get down to this area, we revert back to the mean. So if you look at periods in the past, get to 3 ATR, plus 3 ATR, back to the mean, 2 ATR, back to the mean, 3 ATR, back to the mean, 3 ATR, back to the mean, 2 ATR, back to the mean, and so on. So it's likely that this pattern will continue to proceed, right? Okay, so now looking at the 2 hour, 2 hours kind of little questionable, I guess you could say, because I mean, if you look at it, you can see we're gaining bullish momentum on the 2 hour, but we're clearly in a downtrend. So that's a little questionable, for lack of a better term. So we don't have too much information coming from the 2 hour time frame, besides we are in a downtrend. Now, this could turn into an inverse head and shoulders, but a lot of the times I don't like to play inverse head and shoulders until they actually give me a signal, because most of the time they're fake outs. So here, here, here. So inverse head and shoulders, we could potentially be forming. What we want to see is get the, basically have a trade up here and start creating like stacking the EMAs and creating the, holding this squeeze, and then look for a push back up, which would give us something back into the 21 EMA, which would be right around 436, 437 area. So that's what we're looking for here. Okay, let's go here. Clear this chart off. And so that's kind of number one, right? So it's a little dicey to short down here, but we do look decent for some sort of downside. And it's not coming from the 2 hour chart. The 1 hour chart looks a bit better, right? So we have EMA stack negative. We have the histogram losing momentum, losing bullish momentum after we fired off this long squeeze here. And so initially we would kind of look for a target right around this 220, 250 area. So that's a potential very short-term play that we could take. And I will be looking at this in the morning, and we'll talk about that a little more once we get through all these different charts, right? So the 1 hour looks okay for short side, but really the main one I'm paying attention to is this 30-minute looks really good for downside. Now, notice how I said, okay, we may have a inverse head and shoulders here forming, but take a look at this. We may have a actual head and shoulders pattern kind of forming that's already in a downtrend. So that's kind of something more that I like to see personally that gives me more confidence of a continuation of the trend that we've already seen. So I'm looking for a continuation and for it to kind of follow its steps that it's already taken of this downtrend we have. I'm going to play the trend until it gives me a reason to think otherwise. So this is a potential play to go short. I'm looking, so the way I'm thinking about this going into tomorrow is the 30-minute looks like it's pretty good for a short setup, and so does the 1 hour. The reason why I didn't want to swing it over the weekend is because I knew we had the debt ceiling deal coming out and nobody really knew what was going to happen with that. And so now you can see markets are gapping up. We are up about 0.35. So we're up about 15 points right now. So it's $1.50 in the S&P 500. So we want to keep that in mind. Let me make sure. Yeah, okay, cool. So that's why I decided to wait until tomorrow. Now, what I'd like to see is us to open up, maybe gap up a little bit and fill that gap within the first 30 minutes of trading. That will kind of give me an indication, okay, market's still weak, we can look to go short. Now, if it gaps up and holds and kind of squeezes some short people out and we continue back upside, okay, then the long theory of, okay, we're down at -3 ATR on the daily time frame. Okay, maybe it's time to revert back to the mean. So there's two different ways it could play out. So really what happens in the morning is kind of going to give us the determination of, okay, should we be looking to go long back into the 21 EMA on the daily chart, or should we be looking to catch a little bit of downside back to this 423 area for kind of like a day trade, shorter term swing? So it's really dependent on how the market opens up in the morning. If we open up flat, most of the time, that's probably a good sign that we could continue downside. If we gap up a little bit, but continue to show strength, then we will kind of lean towards the idea of going back to the 21 EMA and going upside. But if we gap up and kind of flush and fill the gap in the first 30 minutes of trading, that will kind of give us the indication, okay, the market's weak, it's probably going to be easy short, right? So let's go back to SPY. So that's kind of the perspective when it comes to SPY. QQQ, this one, little more different. Like, as you can see, this is giving mixed signals as well. So we've got this head and shoulders that kind of looks good on the 30-minute. We still have stacked EMAs on the 30-minute time frame. So that's not checking off all the boxes for me to go short. But now the histogram is showing bearish momentum. So we'll have to just see what this decides to end up doing in the morning. So, but if I was going to go short on either of these indexes, obviously I'm going to pick SPY because it gives me the better setup. So that's what I'm looking at going into tomorrow morning. And then as for the rest of the time, I'm going to continue to play the trend, but ideally I'm looking to go short near this 21 EMA. Notice we pretty much got there on Friday, not for SPY, which is extra more weak. And we have a gap to go fill down here. So let's make sure we mark that. We have this gap to go fill. So we could potentially go fill this gap somewhere down here. So that's what I'm kind of paying attention to in terms of, okay, what are we doing here? So that's kind of all the pieces of the puzzle. And that's what we're going to be paying attention to going into tomorrow, at least I will. And then we kind of got this key resistance here where we gapped up off of and rejected on Friday. And so QQQ, a little bit stronger, almost came back and tapped to 21, but I think it may be probable we'll go test this low again. And yeah, so that's kind of the analysis for QQQ, SPY. Now, this is not, so for a longer term perspective, the 10 EMA, if we go to this chart here, you can see, if you look to this chart on the left, you can see the put call ratio is above, the 10 SMA is above 1.0. So I am looking for a longer term reversal that's going to happen or may happen in the coming, give it 6 months. I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to take 6 months for it to play out, but what I'm looking for is a ultimate, like a kind of bottom in the market in terms of the downtrend that we're in now. It may continue to trade upside and continue to trade up in the 10 SMA continuing to trade upside, but I am ultimately looking for shorts to get wiped out from a longer term perspective and possibly have a move something like something like this here, where we had kind of this downtrend and then we wiped out shorts and had a nice beginning of a new uptrend. Something that, so that's a longer term perspective view right now. What I was talking about before on this 30-minute stuff, that's what I'm going to be doing day trading wise, looking at the charts based on the shorter term. Longer term, I'm paying attention to the put call ratio. That's giving me that indication, as well as this monthly squeeze looks great in terms of sending us back to, or sending us to 500, honestly, in my opinion. I think by give it 2025, I think we'll be able to go tap 500, or by sometime at least in 2024, I think we're going to go test the previous high here at what is it? Right around 467. I'm looking for us to go retest that in relatively new future or near future within the next 6 months to a year. So that's the longer term perspective. Okay, so the rest of these charts here, Apple, I mean, this one has a few squeezes, looks kind of similar to QQQ, doesn't look ideal. 30-minute does though. So this is a potential short trade that we could look at going into tomorrow, but more than likely, I'm probably going to just trade the index and go short the index and play QQQ or SPY, sorry. And as for the rest of that, we've got a weekly squeeze. Now, this is starting to look like the potential that it could fire short side, and we could go test that 160 area. So I am paying attention to this weekly squeeze on Apple for longer term puts, but it kind of depends on what the market ends up doing. And we're about to get this crossover on the 21 and 34 EMA. So we got the histogram, or 21 and 9 EMA, and then also we got the histogram heading lower. So I'm kind of paying attention to this. We're 3 bars in as well for the weekly squeeze. Microsoft, this one, similar story. So the chart looks better on this one. It looks, the histogram is still pushing negative, which is not the best sign, but the EMAs are stacked, and this is kind of giving me a little bit of bull flag vibes. So I'm getting that from Microsoft, but obviously we need the histogram to turn back in our favor for me to be interested in playing that. Google, nothing wrong with this chart here, honestly. So only thing we would look for is probably in 2 weeks' time. We'd want to see next week play out, and then the week after, maybe pay attention to for Google. If once momentum turns back to the upside, we could look to go long on this name, go take out the 52-week high, and then ultimately try and go test those all-time highs around 150. Amazon, weekly squeeze, same idea here. Nothing wrong with the chart. I'm led to believe it's going to go upside. So sticking with this one, and then my first target if we get triggered to the upside. But this is still same thing with Google. We need about 2 more weeks of price action before I can make a decision, before we get any sort of trigger. And I'm looking for that 170 potentially, and then ultimately all-time highs if the market can comply. NVIDIA, this one's setting up in a weekly squeeze, looks bullish as well, but we need we'll reevaluate this one probably next month, honestly. So that's kind of the perspective here for NVIDIA. We're in terms of the weekly time frame, we're not going to do anything with this one for quite some time. Now, okay, so here's one thing to pay attention to. We have a 4-hour squeeze, right? So this one, we could potentially look to go long and go fill this gap once the EMAs become stacked and flip over. And yeah, so that's kind of what I'm paying attention to there. We got the 2 hour squeeze that's fired off. This one kind of depends on QQQ, right? So pay attention to this one. Daily chart looks a little rough. I mean, it looks like we're creating higher high or lower highs and lower lows. And then meta, this one I'm not going to touch. We like, if you guys have been in classes previously and are students of the squeeze, like these high compression ones, we usually like to stay away from those because they usually can be sketchy. The example I always go to is AI because it's always the one that I remember. You can see here, high compression squeeze. We had a breakout upside, fake that breakout gap down, and then flushed. So that's why I don't like to touch meta until it gives me a better perspective. Okay, what's really going on? Because these high compression squeezes can be a little sketchy. 4 hour, similar story. Just not really something you want to touch here. And weekly squeeze looks great, right? This one probably looks the best out of any stock that we are looking at currently. So keep an eye on this one. Like I said, this will probably take 3 or 4 months, right? Tesla, we've got a 2 hour squeeze, 2-day squeeze. 2-day, nothing wrong with this one. You'd like to see it above the 21 EMA. Histogram is firing upside. So this one honestly looks pretty good for upside. Yeah, this one, okay, I'll keep this one on my watch list for sure for a longer term trade based on this 2-day squeeze, and look to go long this one and potentially take it up into that 52-week high. We also have a gap to fill here. But we have earnings, so that can kind of screw with what's going on here. So we have earnings October 18th. Okay, so we got 2 weeks. So couple things that could happen with this. We could chop sideways and this could kind of just suck, or we could see a run in earnings, which I would like to see. Definitely high potential for that. So keep this one on your watch list for this week. Definitely pay attention to that one. Netflix, nothing to do here, right? We had the 2-day squeeze fire off short, and we've got nothing going here. We've got a weekly squeeze. We'll see. This may flip over, turn bearish, and we can take this one short, similar to Apple. So the rest of these charts, the weekly charts, look good to go long, really, besides Apple and Netflix. Now, that's really what's going to play the biggest part, is how the weekly squeeze ends up forming for SPY and QQQ. But based on the monthly chart, we want to lean bullish, that it's probably going to fire upside, as well as the fact of the put call ratio with the 10 SMA over 1.0. Cool. Okay, so the only other thing that I'm going to be paying attention to this week, I mainly have been completely paying attention to just the indexes. I may start to look to play these longer term stocks or longer term trades, like for the weekly squeezes, because they do look good. But in terms of like day trading, shorter term trades, I'm just sticking to the indexes. I found it's makes my life a whole lot easier. I don't have to look at a whole bunch of charts. And then I might add to my position by taking, like if I'm short SPY, maybe I'll go short Apple or something else that looks good as well to have a little more short exposure. But okay, let's get into your guys' stocks. And there's one other kind of sector that I'm paying attention to that I may want to trade this week. And William, you kind of led me into that, Oxy, so the energy sector. If, like I said, if you guys have stocks you want me to look at, put them in the chat and I'll go over them now. Let's start with I'm not going to go over Oxy right this second. I'm going to go over the energy sector as a whole. So right now, energy sector looks pretty good, right? We're in a clear uptrend. We're right near 52-week highs. We just need momentum to shift on this one. And we could see another squeeze potentially like this play here. So I'm paying attention to this to potentially go long. And so that kind of goes along the same lines as Oxy. I will probably look to go long energy names if they set up. Now, Oxy does not look as good as XLE because we've got the histogram negative. We've got a little bit of head and shoulders choppy action going on, but XLE looks much better in my opinion. So if you're looking to trade Oxy potentially to the upside, like if this fires downside, go ahead, short Oxy, right? If this starts to produce a bearish setup. But right now I'm leaning bullish on XLE. We just need a trigger for momentum to shift to the upside. And probably the name that I'll look at is Exxon. So this one we just broke out. We made, I believe, yeah, all-time highs as of recently. So I'm looking for a continuation of this. I just need a few more days. We can check on this later this week, but this one looks good for upside squeeze. And we've got earnings in November. So I'd probably buy November expiration and look for a run into earnings. And you could honestly take an entry off this 4-hour squeeze once it kind of sets up to how we want it to. So yeah, this one looks good. Personally, I would say keep it on your watch list. CVX, similar story. This one looks great as well, but I would lean towards Exxon because it's at 52-week highs right near it. So you would want to look for a continuation of that, probably into that 125. And this is kind of where you'd want to take advantage of fibs and use these to your advantage because we are at 52-week highs. So it's a little more tough to pick a good target. So initially we already hit this target of 120. I'd look for this 11618 extension at 121. And then so we can also look at this from a shorter time frame. You can also look if this ends up filling out to be the low here, we can look for that. Yeah, 122 area is probably the place where you're going to want to start taking majority profit or moving up stops. So that's kind of my take on Oxy and Exxon and energy sector. I'm already going to keep those on watch. I'll pay attention to Exxon mostly. CLF. This one, I just don't personally, I don't think there's anything to do with this one. Like, it might be flipping over here to start a new uptrend to potentially go test this $18 mark. But right now, I would say there's nothing to do right now besides the fact that we are at kind of a key support level or like kind of demand zone area. So yeah, this one, what I would look for personally is pay attention to this 2-day squeeze, wait for the EMAs to flip over, get that 9 above the 21, and then look to play, if it's still in the squeeze, look for histogram momentum to head to the upside, and then look to take out this $18 mark. So yeah, that's why I pay attention there. You kept asking me about Marvel. How'd that end up doing? Was it Marvel? This doesn't. Yeah, okay. Ended up bouncing right off that gap level. So interesting. Yeah, this one kind of already played off. Short squeeze, fired to the downside. Okay, so Disney. Everybody wants to play Disney these days. Okay, so as you can see, clear support here. It's the 52-week low. We're also at key support of this previous low. So at 7907. So just remember that 7907, that area there. So, I mean, okay, so the way I would look at this one is it may bounce here. So you need to get ready for that bounce just in case it happens. Next thing is, now this is a good bearish setup. So if it ends up, like if you end up taking this short, and it may bounce here and continue upside, right? But if you take this one short in anticipation that this support is going to break, this thing's going to flush. And it's going to probably have a pretty significant move to the downside and probably go test $70 somewhere right around here, right around the $72 mark. So yes, we're at a lot of support. You can see we bounced here, we bounced here, we bounced here, right around this $80 area. But if we break that, this is going to have a pretty hard flush. And like I've told you guys before, each time a support gets tested, it usually gets weaker. So I would go in with the anticipation of that happening. And so yeah, that's how I think about this. And so if you look at it, okay, we've had one test of the support, we've had two tests of the support, we've had, this is our third test. You could call it our second test if you wanted to, but if it comes back down to test that, more than likely it's probably going to flush. And it's either going to do something like this, where it's going to flush through, liquidity grab people, and then do whatever it wants to do from here, or it's going to do just a straight flush through that support because it's been tested so many times. The more times it gets tested, the more likely it's going to break down. But everything about this is in the makes of a short trade. Let's see, what's the other times looking like? We've got a 3-day squeeze. 3-day squeeze looks pretty good for the downside, and it's continuing a strong downtrend. So I don't see anything wrong with this one here. Now, weekly squeeze, that one might be a little more tough for this to fire downside, but I think it'll make it a lot easier if we lose momentum or if we start gaining momentum. So little risky, but the reward is pretty fat. That's how I would look at this one. Okay, you guys got any other tickers you want me to look at? Is Dell a good buy long? Also, Bitcoin going up, are mining stocks a good long? Okay, so Dell. So you're asking, is this a good to go long? Okay, so I'd wait for this. It's got a daily squeeze, so, and it's holding up, so it's very strong. So I would probably consider, like, once we get a momentum shift back to the upside, you can take this one long back into the all-time or the 52-week highs, and which is also all-time highs. So yeah, I think once you get that setup of the squeeze, wait until maybe Wednesday or Thursday, reevaluate. And then it could potentially be a good long setup. Now you could look at the 4-hour, wait for the momentum to shift back upside. But I do, this is one thing I've talked to you guys about a good bit, is when you see something gap up after earnings and trade sideways, typically that's a really good sign for the company. And it gaps up, trades sideways, and waits for the EMAs to meet it rather than going to meet the EMAs. That's usually a really good sign to go long. So I do like this one. Just give it a few more days, let the squeeze set up, let the histogram momentum shift, or you can play this 4-hour once the momentum shifts bullish to like light blue bars. So that's my opinion on that one. Mining stocks, so I would go with like Mara. So we can just look at it from the perspective of there. Personally, would I go long this? Absolutely not. Like for long term, like investing in this, absolutely not. Like, because like look at the trend. Down, down, down. And people ask this all the time when stuff gets cheap and gets down in these prices. Like, no, I would not want to go long this because it's not a good chart. It's just downtrend, some pops here and there, but that's about it. It's kind of like right now with marijuana stocks. Like it's just trading down. You don't want to get in that. I'd rather be in something like that. Oh, like this. Like, what do you think is more likely to go upside? This near 52-week highs, or this, or this? See what I'm saying? Like this chart, do you think this chart's, if you had to put $1,000 towards something thinking it's going to go up, would you rather put your money in this or this? I mean, it's already up. So it's like, it's clear. Like this is clearly going up, and look at the trend it's had previously. So yeah, I would lean more towards something like that rather than investing in Bitcoin stocks. I don't think Bitcoin's a terrible investment. I just think that if you put any money in that, you got to be okay with it going to zero. This one looks good. Uptrend, INTC, solid uptrend. I'd wait for momentum to shift, and I'd go long this one and look for the weekly squeeze to fire off and see if we can go take out this $40. And then next target would be somewhere around that $50 mark. So that's what I would look for. And here, daily chart doesn't look good, but if you're taking it based on a longer term perspective, looks good. AMD. Okay, so this one is starting, like, becoming in the makes of possibly a short trade, because we got the histogram pushing lower. We've got the 9 and 21 crossing bearish. So I wouldn't be looking to go long this one. I'd potentially look at this for possibly a short trade. Honestly, I would say it could be ready to take now, to go short from a weekly time frame perspective. Daily, it's just in a clear downtrend, so I wouldn't fight that until it shifts. One thing I want to look at is MU, because I was looking at the weekly squeeze on this one. This looks similar to INTC. I would consider going with this one before I went with INTC, just because it looks better. It's closer to 52-week highs or all-time highs and 52 weeks. So maybe lean towards this one if you're looking to go long for a longer term perspective. I like this one to go long. It's in a solid uptrend. I may look to grab this one for a longer term swing myself. But yeah, but daily perspective, this one might be ready for a short. All right, guys. Well, cool. I think I covered all your tickers. Thank you guys for coming. If you have questions, let me know. And yeah, we're here every day for the markets. If you're interested in checking out our classes, our strategies, things like that, make sure to sign up for the free trial. And I will see you guys for the markets tomorrow and see if we can get some good trades in this week. Thank you guys for coming. Have a good rest of your night. Hope it helped.